Welcome to KRQE's New Mexico News Insiders, 2025 Regional Edward R. Murrow Award winner for Best Podcast. Here's Gabrielle Burkhart and Chris McKee.
So, personal question, Chris.
Yes.
What is your college degree in?
It's in journalism. Wouldn't you know?
Yeah,
Right.
we've probably had this conversation before.
Yeah, it's true, but there are a lot of journalists in our newsroom that sometimes did not major in journalism.
For sure. And can you share, did you graduate with any college debt?
It's a personal question, but I will share. I did. It was at least about $20,000. I was fortunate enough to have my grandparents put away a lot of money for all of their grandkids to do college tuition, and so I also was going to a state school in Oregon as well. So, but it was part of the picture was of picking which school I was going to go to was very much cost, and how much I was going to incur after that. And so, it took me about 10 years to pay it all off, but I got there.
You did it?
Yeah, paid off.
Good job.
Well, yeah.
All right, another high five.
It wasn't as bad as what a lot of other people we hear over the years end up leaving college with.
College can get very expensive. I'll share, I thankfully graduated with zero college debt, me and my husband both, which was a big accomplishment. Worked a lot, had parents and grandparents who helped a little bit offset the cost. But it's a hard thing to do, especially these days with the cost of just everything being so expensive. But aside from the cost of college, I think both of us can agree that college held some really formative years that helped us jumpstart careers in journalism. And while that's the case for a lot of people, often the debt can be so crippling. Here in New Mexico, there are several programs to help eliminate the cost of higher ed, if not offset it quite a bit. And here to talk with us about some of those programs are two key players in New Mexico's Higher Education Department, or HED. New Mexico has a lot of acronyms, as we've acknowledged on this show. But we have Secretary Stephanie Rodriguez and Deputy Secretary Patricia Trujillo. Thank you both for joining us.
Thank you for having us. We're excited.
We're happy to be here.
Absolutely. Well, Secretary Rodriguez, let's start with you. Before you joined the Higher Ed Department, you worked for Governor Lujan Grisham in Congress, it sounds like, from 2014 to 2018. Tell us more about yourself. What led you to the work that you're doing now?
Yeah, I'm actually from San Diego, California, but I moved to New Mexico when I was 18 years old, bright-eyed, bushy-tailed, to go to the University of New Mexico, where I studied architecture, planning, and flamenco. Okay. And I danced flamenco many years till I was 23 years old. I got my undergrad and graduate degree from the University of New Mexico, Go Lobos. Met my husband. He was a UNM soccer player, and we have made Albuquerque our home for over 18 years and had our daughter in New Mexico, bought our home in New Mexico, and we're just so proud to be here. When I finished my graduate studies, nobody would hire me. Nobody would hire me because they're like, you don't have the experience we need. However, Governor Lujan Grisham, who was a congresswoman at the time, said, I'm going to give you a chance. Let's see what you can do. I worked in Congress, made my way into state government, and when I was there, the governor asked me to lead the higher education department in the tuition-free college program that she wanted to establish in her administration. I'm also proud of the fact that my father went to college. He was the first on any side of the family to go to college and get a college degree. However, out of his 4 children, I'm the only one who went to college and got a degree, and that's true to today. So my core mission and values is getting people in the door and having access so that they can get that degree and have family-sustaining careers in their home communities, which is critically important. But that's a little bit about me and my journey to where I am now.
Okay. Well, Deputy Secretary Trujillo, same thing. I read that you're born and raised in Espanola Valley, are a tenured professor at Northern New Mexico College. But what led you to focus a career on higher education? Why is it so important to you personally?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I sure am a proud daughter of the Espanola Valley. And I always love telling my story next to Stephanie's because we really kind of represent the gamut of what is possible for Latino families with higher ed. In my family, I'm the 3rd generation of college-educated Chicanas because my grandmother worked for the Manhattan Project in the 1940s. And she was bright and she was interacting with scientists, and somebody just happened to say, you're a really bright young woman, you should go to college. And so she took that to heart, and she's the person who started the tradition of higher education education in our family. So I'm the third. My niece recently became the fourth. And so it's something that we're really proud of. And also in regard to serving higher ed, I come from a long line of school teachers. So public education is in our blood. My grandmother was a school teacher, my parents, my sister. And I think that I was really drawn to education because it's our family trade. But I wanted to do something a little different. And so I really loved higher ed. I loved pursuing my studies. My major, I have 3 English degrees, and I was able to attend graduate school because it was funded out of state at the University of Nebraska and the University of at the University of Texas in San Antonio, and really prepare for coming back. But my goal was always to return to my hometown and the institution there, Northern New Mexico College. And so I'm really grateful that I was able to start my career at Northern, worked there for about a decade before the governor appointed me to be deputy secretary.
Right on. Wow. Interesting, because yes, you both have very different journeys in education, but right there, working side by side as well, bringing your own unique perspectives to, I imagine, the many different people that you find yourself serving with the work you do now. We mentioned New Mexico has some pretty unique programs to help students seeking a degree in higher ed, and to do so without racking up so much college debt. Let's talk about 2 of the most well-known programs. So this is the Opportunity Scholarship and the Lottery Scholarship. Again, 2 separate things here. We'll start with that oldest one, though, the Lottery Scholarship. That was established in '96. It's the nation's first tuition-free college program. And according to HED, it continues to cover full tuition for around 10,000 students a year. How is the state able to provide this particular scholarship, and how does that work? Obviously, we said the lottery is in there, but explain to us, how does that work, and who does it target?
Yeah, definitely. So let's talk about who it targets. It targets recent high school graduates, folks that have been honorably discharged from the military, or people who just completed their high school equivalency credential. That's the main demographic. I'm really excited to share with you all today. Last week we ran the numbers. So we were at 10,000 individuals receiving the lottery scholarship. We broke a record. We're at over 14,000 students who received the opportunity scholarship, the lottery scholarship last academic year. Now, you stole some of my thunder. A lot of people don't know, but the lottery scholarship was the first tuition promise program in the country, and it was started with the lottery. So people would buy their tickets for the lottery. It would grow into this fund, and the proceeds of that fund would actually go to support college tuition for our New Mexicans that were recent high school graduates. Many people have gotten their foot in the door because of the lottery scholarship. Over 180,000 New Mexicans received the lottery scholarship since it was implemented in 1996. Many of those people still work and live in New Mexico, and all you have to do to be eligible is graduate from a high school in New Mexico, and those 2 other exceptions that I mentioned. The other great thing about it is we have open admission campuses here in New Mexico. So if you don't have the GPA requirements to go to a UNM, NMSU, or New Mexico Tech, we still have institutions that will take you at any GPA level, and you still get that lottery scholarship, which is really exciting.
And with that lottery scholarship, is it entirely covered by the money that people spend on the lottery now? Does it get supplements into the fund in any other way?
That's a great question. So the answer is no. We do have the lottery. It was able to sustain it until 2015, but since 2015, it went down to only 75% of tuition. But under the Lujan Grisham administration in 2019, we were able to supplement state funds into that fund to make it 100% again. We have sustainability for the program until 2028, and then the Higher Education Trust Fund, which was actually passed a couple of years ago, will also sustain that program. It's almost $1 billion that goes towards our tuition-free college programs.
Were supplements needed because people just weren't buying the lottery as much? I'm assuming those numbers sort of ebb and flow.
There's A and B, and that's A. That's one of the answers. The other thing is the rising cost of tuition. I will say in New Mexico, we have relatively low tuition rates, which is fantastic. But once the lottery scholarship was implemented, we did see a balloon effect with that. We've since been able to work with higher education institutions to have no to little tuition increases with the Opportunity Scholarship being implemented in 2022. But You're right. Lower ticket sales and then tuition increases.
Okay. Well, let's move to the Opportunity Scholarship. It came along fairly recently in 2022 when the legislature passed the act directing $75 million to the scholarship. Why this second scholarship program, and who does that benefit exactly?
That's a great question. And we actually interviewed with you all about 3 years ago when it first passed, and it was so exciting to talk about it. And when we had the discussion before, we looked at the age of an average student in our college system. And guess what? It's not an 18-year-old. It's actually somebody who is 26 years old. But with that being said, the lottery scholarship wasn't meeting that need for that demographic, and that's when the Opportunity Scholarship came to fruition and kicked in. Since passing, we've been able to do 100% of tuition and most student fees at any of New Mexico's 29 public colleges and universities. It also covers high demand certificates, which is not common for state programs. We've actually increased certificate production by almost 30%. Which is our trades, our vocational education programs. We cover associate and bachelor's degrees on top of that. We have no restrictions on that. And then all you have to do is maintain a 2.5 GPA once you get the Opportunity Scholarship, and you can go to school part-time or full-time. I may have missed something though, Deputy. Do you have anything to add to that?
I think you covered it, but really, as Secretary was saying, the thing that makes the opportunity so special is that it is a scholarship for people who haven't historically been the target of scholarships, right? So it's saying like maybe you made a different decision right outside of high school. Maybe you were somebody who started college but didn't finish. And in New Mexico, we want to create as many pathways to higher ed as possible. You know, Governor always tells us and, encourages us to share the message that there's no wrong door to higher education. And so we really live that truth, and especially when we combine the two programs. One of the things that people don't realize is that many students are going to utilize both lottery and opportunity. So for many of our lottery students, lottery doesn't cover fees. Well, then opportunity kicks in and it pays for those. And then this summer, we just really increased our summer enrollment because also with the Opportunity Scholarship, students are able to now pay for summer courses as well.
Have you talked to, either of you had a chance to talk to anybody who's had this scholarship personally and get anecdotes from them about what it's done for their lives?
You know, it's really funny you bring that up. We were traveling, I want to say it was for some committee presentation that we were doing, and we were so tired, and we're like, let's get a coffee. So we went through the drive-thru, and the person that was in the drive-thru had just enrolled at the University of New Mexico and was telling us how they get to go to college for free. And we were sitting there, and we're like, well, guess what? We worked on that program, and we're so excited for you. And it was a really beautiful conversation, but I can't tell you how many times we've just been out in the community and we overhear people talking about the fact that they're going to college now because there is an opportunity and a pathway for them to do it.
Yeah, one day I was just at dinner with a friend, and it was kind of a fly-on-the-wall situation. And there was a family eating. We were in Las Cruces for work, but I was just there after hours. And a young woman was with her family, and she told her family, let me get it. I got my, financial aid letter today, and the opportunity kicked in. And so then when she, I just was watching, and I heard her explain it to her family, and they got up, and they were hugging and embracing. And that was also a really beautiful moment to kind of witness from afar, just understanding that, allowing this kind of funding is really changing families' lives, right? Like individuals, but also families.
Mm-hmm. That burden of the financial debt can be a lot. Yeah. As a lot of us know.
Yeah. Well, as you were mentioning at the beginning of the program, talking about loans and how we made it. When I was in college, my brother, my sister, we were all undergrads at New Mexico State, go Aggies. But my mom was also in her master's program at UNM. And so 4 out of 5 of us were in college. And so in terms of how do you finance that for a family, right? Like everybody wants to pursue. And now families don't have to think about it in the same way, right? There's more options for them.
We'll be right back with more of the New Mexico News Insiders.
Hi, I'm Ann Perrette, an investigative reporter in our KRQE Investigates unit. We are always working on something new. Right after it airs on KRQE, you can always find it on our website, krqe.com, or the next day on our KRQE YouTube channel. And now back to the New Mexico News Insiders.
So this is state assistance, to be clear. These types of scholarships, they're not federal dollars here or under a federal funding threat necessarily, as we've heard with other education programs, right?
Absolutely. This is 100% state funded. So that means we have sustainability for this program for many years and our fellow New Mexicans.
And how does the state have that, sustainability? You mentioned there's now this trust fund in play here. So I imagine that having that fund and probably the interest that comes off of the fund will help fuel in continued dollars. But really, how does the state afford to fund programs like these, and are they built for a true longevity?
Yeah, that was my number one task when Governor looked me in the eyes and said, you're going to make tuition-free college happen, right? And then when we started having the conversation with legislators for them to really, I like to say, drink the Kool-Aid and get them on board, they did hit me with sustainability. So we had some preliminary conversations, and when I say we, that's the governor and then finance leadership in the House and the Senate, and said we need a recurring revenue source for this. I'm really proud of the fact that both the governor and the legislature worked together to put almost $200 million of recurring funds year over year that is promised for the Opportunity Scholarship. And then we started talking about, well, what if there's a downturn in the economy? What if tuition outpaces the Opportunity Scholarship, which won't happen because we do have some safeguards in the bill. But what if it does happen in another administration? And that's when the Higher Education Trust Fund came into conversations. We're only one of 7 states with a trust fund dedicated to higher education. We're also the largest investment in a higher education trust fund compared to any other state in the nation, which is really exciting. So if something were to happen to our revenues in New Mexico, we have backups. We have the Lottery Tuition Fund, we have that recurring revenue source, and the Higher Education Trust Fund.
So you guys don't see this going away with other administrations either?
Honestly, we really don't, and I'll tell you why. Patricia, how many legislators did we talk to on both sides of the aisle? A lot.
Yeah, they probably heard from us too much. We had them on speed dial.
Yes, we really did. And why do I say that? When we were doing the Opportunity Scholarship, it wasn't about a Democratic priority or Republican priority. It was about a New Mexican-focused priority. And we got legislators on both sides of the aisle. As a matter of fact, if you look at the votes for the Opportunity Scholarship Act, I think there was only 9 people in the House that voted against it out of the whole entire House and Senate, right? And we were able to have those conversations and that buy-in to say, this is incredibly important, not only in Albuquerque, Las Cruces, and Santa Fe, some of our larger cities, but for rural New Mexico as well. And we were able to tie that to rural colleges within their communities. We were able to tie it to the industry within those communities. And we've built that support network on both sides of the aisle, and also that community base. I can't tell you how many times we've been to a community and we hear, oh, my hita or my hito stayed in New Mexico because of free college. So now they get to go to college down the street. We did a study in Lee County for Cabinet in Your Community, where the governor actually goes to communities, does a town hall and a resource fair. And in Lee County, we were able to increase the number of people staying in New Mexico. It used to be something like 4,000 of their graduates over a 5-year period would stay in New Mexico for college. It's now over 9,000 people who are making the decision to stay for college in New Mexico. And it's just, you have to build in that support on both sides, and we did that. So we really don't think it's going to go anywhere.
Do you know the total grad numbers, just to compare, like 9,000 out of how many?
Of high school graduates?
Yeah.
So approximately each year, it's a little under 20,000 students each year
Got it.
that graduate from our high school system.
Okay. What were you going to add?
Oh, I was also just going to say that, like, in terms of having the stability of funding, we talk a lot in the agency that historically the agency has been fiduciary, has been regulatory, but Governor Michelle Lujan Grisham, has really asked us to also put students, right, student success, student graduation at the center of what we do. And we're really excited that stability also means that we can have intergenerational learning. In my own experience being a faculty member in Northern New Mexico, like some of my favorite classes where mom and daughter are taking classes together, uncle and nephew. I even had a really beautiful class where grandparents parent and his grandson were taking classes together. And so there's this idea too, coming from a rural community, serving in a rural community, the idea that a lot of times, people pursue higher ed, but then they leave, right? Because the opportunities are elsewhere. And when you ask people, would you want to stay home? And it's like, well, I need to make a family sustaining income. And so now we're also really empowering, students, the institutions themselves, the industry to dream big about New Mexico's future, right? And so in many ways, we think about the way the funding has been developed as future-proofing the program, but really so that we can have that intergenerational learning.
Okay. Well, those aren't the only two higher ed programs. There's also a loan for service program that targets our state's need for teachers and healthcare workers specifically, right? Can you tell us, how does that work?
Yeah. Before we came into the administration, the state was really good about prioritizing sectors with high need. And those were health professionals, teachers, and then social workers in our Children, Youth, and Families Department system. And with that being said, we came into this administration, and I'll use the example of health professional loan repayment. Approximately 22 people each year would receive assistance through that program. And my question was, why? We need doctors, we need nurses, we need mental and behavioral health counselors. Why are we only awarding 22 people? They were like, well, we're only getting about anywhere from $1 million to $4 million a year to support this. And so with that being said, when COVID hit, the need for health professionals was just elevated to a whole nother level, right? And we went into the governor's office with this idea and said, why don't we just increase the dollar amount for health professional loan repayment and teachers? We had a high vacancy rate in the last administration. I'm really proud that this administration has decreased it by 35%, but we still need teachers. So we increased the amount of funding anywhere from 20 to 30 million for health professionals and 10 million for our teachers. Well, what has that done? Over 1,200 health professionals are receiving loan repayment assistance and debt relief through our department. Now we have almost 1,000 teachers year over year also receiving that benefit. And it's been really exciting because, when you're able to take that cost off of their shoulders, they're able to spend more money here locally in our economies and in New Mexico and have what we call family sustaining careers without that fear of having to pay off your debt every single month. Focus it on other areas, which is really exciting.
I imagine you're obviously tracking, because you helped pay for their education and you want to see them, stick to the agreement, right? Which is provide services in the state of New Mexico for a certain amount of time. I think it's about 3 years at least.
It's
right?
3 years for health professionals, 2 for our teachers.
Yeah. And so how, though, once even you get beyond that 2-3 year period, how are you tracking the metrics to see if these loan for service programs are actually, adding to the need or addressing the need that we see in healthcare workers and in teacher shortages? How do you make sure that that's just, moving beyond just the agreement, I guess, so to speak?
Yeah, so it helps that we have the in law that they have to commit to after we pay off your debt or after you finish applying for our program. You have 2 years as a teacher to stay. You have 3 years as a health professional. So you're absolutely right. Like, what are we tracking? What are the metrics? Well, what I can tell you is 2 years, especially 3 years, a lot of people make life decisions. That's buying a home, that's starting a family, that's growing your family. Maybe you have to become a caregiver to your family members, and it's really hard to move at that point. We did some data on health professional loan repayment to see our nurses and health professionals staying in New Mexico. 92% of physicians who receive our health professional loan repayment program stay in New Mexico. Almost 100% of our nurses stay in New Mexico. Allied health, 82%. So we're showing that you commit to these people, you do it through a time frame, and they're making these life decisions, which ultimately will have them stay in New Mexico. The other thing, and I think the deputy can elaborate on this, is a lot of the awards are actually going to people who were born and raised in New Mexico. They're going to stay in New Mexico because they have that commitment to stay here. Their families are here. Their communities are here. They're not going to go away. And if they do go away, oftentimes they return, and the deputy is a fabulous example of that.
Yeah, thanks for that. And so part of this, the way I like to think about it is that it's never one policy that's going to keep somebody in the state of New Mexico. It's a constellation of policies, right? So we're really fortunate at the higher education department to be really working in ways to support people financially to be able to attain those credentials that are going to change their lives. We know that the number one way out of poverty is any kind of higher ed credential. And so we're dedicated, and that's why we work so hard at providing all of these different pathways. But when you look at things like the supports that are coming out of the early childhood and care department, right? For some families being able to receive free childcare. When we look at all the different kinds of programs that are working to further create that strong base for public education, right? We're trying to create the schools and communities that people want to, where they want their kids to be educated and where they want to work. And so for me, we often talk about workforce development, which is critical and a big part of the work that we do, but also bringing in that community development. How are we preparing people to create the communities that they want to live in? And so for me, that's, again, every pathway. We often hear that there are many shortages also in CTE pathways. We need plumbers, we need electricians, and industry is asking for that, but also in rural communities, we're like, hey, we need our houses rewired too. And so what does it mean for people to really be able to choose, right? Not just where they go to higher ed, but also the careers that they want to have, and to maintain our small rural communities. And that's broadly defined, right? So rural is frontier communities, tribal communities, traditional Hispano villages, and of course, a lot of our agricultural communities throughout the state. And so just with that rich diversity of who we are as a state, we have as many programs at our higher ed institutions that can help further train them or prepare them for the lives that they want.
Okay. And as I understand it, like a healthcare worker, for example, doesn't have to have a degree from a New Mexico university or college in order to get those college loans repaid and utilize the program, right?
That's right.
Okay. Good to know.
Yeah. Well, that's seemingly very important too, because I do think that there's a component you see of everybody wants to have a moment where they can explore the world. And for some, that is indeed college.
Exploring the Southwest.
That's right.
We've met those people.
Yeah. We'll be right back with more on New Mexico News Insiders.
KRQE News 13 investigations. One of the biggest cons in New Mexico history. How did they get away with it?
Well, they had an accomplice. The state of New Mexico.
A road rage encounter leads to murder.
I miss him every single day.
Did the judicial system fail here?
New Mexico's families, homes, and lives are left in ashes.
There's a level of anxiety.
FEMA has been an abject and abysmal failure.
Watch anytime on krqe.com or our YouTube channel.
Governor Michelle Lujan Grisham, she pointed to a statistic in 2022 speaking to the need for financial assistance for adult education, saying the average age of a college student in New Mexico, as we talked about a little bit earlier, is around 26. The majority of students attend part-time due to the work and the family obligations they may already have in their lives. How are you targeting these non-traditional adults here today? And are you seeing more enrollment from or for higher ed from those folks in their adult section of their life, less right out of high school over the last 3 years since this Opportunity Scholarship has been in play?
There's a couple components to that. And I'll start with boots on the ground is the best way to get the word out there. And making sure you're going beyond urban New Mexico, especially our rural communities. We have 29 public colleges and universities and tribal colleges in the state of New Mexico. The majority of those are in rural and frontier communities. Making sure that we have that information available and accessible at our libraries, our community centers, even our senior centers, so that people know that they can go to school here in New Mexico and it's tuition free. That's critical. Being on the radio station, I can't tell you how many times I used to get so mad at comms folks, but my goodness, when you're on the radio, you get the word out like no other. Being on TV, that's really what we're trying to do and why we've really beefed up communications and outreach at our department. As a matter of fact, we just hired a new person who's dedicated to financial aid outreach so that they can go to every corner of New Mexico so people know about these services. So that's part one. Part two, I'm just kidding. I have 3 parts, but let me tell you about part 2. Part 2 is our college or our high schools, working with the public education department, their college and career readiness bureau in collaboration with our department. We serve on the Dual Credit Council, and that means that we work with high school students to get high school and college credit simultaneously. And it's really critical that if they are looking to do nursing, how are we creating that pathway so that they get their associate degree upon completion of high school and then go on to their bachelor's degree in 2 years? We're working on that component. Or somebody who wants to get their credential in high school and start working right away, dual credit provides that. And then part 3, and where this deputy secretary is going to help me out, is our adult education program. So high school equivalency credential. We've increased enrollment by over 40% since the pandemic in our adult education program, which is pretty impressive if you look at national averages. But on top of that, of the over 10,000 students that are in our adult education system, 1,200 have made the decision to continue on into college. And that's actually a really big number. If you look at other states, people get their high school equivalency credential and say, okay, I did what I had to do, I'm good. But we're actually seeing people continue on to colleges and universities because it's tuition free. So that program has been really vital in encouraging the program and increasing that enrollment for those adult learners. I don't know if you have anything to add to that, Deputy.
Yeah, thanks. A lot of people don't realize that the Adult Education Division is a part of the Higher Education Department, and we've been doing everything that we can to fold these learners into the system. We have 26 adult education and 18 adult literacy programs throughout the state in both rural and urban locations, and there's at least one in 24 of New Mexico's 33 counties, and those that don't have a program, there's proximity to the one that is in the county adjacent to them. And so, as Secretary was mentioning, in FY24, we served over 13,500 New Mexican adults. And so oftentimes these are folks who are coming in with basic literacy, basic numeracy skills that need to earn that credential. We know that by 2030, I believe, 65,000 jobs annually will require a post-secondary degree. So again, that concept of getting everybody the right door to higher education, a lot of times adult education is that first step that can lead to a pathway to a higher ed institution. Or we have something else called IETs, or Integrated Education and Training Programs. There are 29 of them across the state. And again, for these high school equivalency learners, oftentimes they're older, they might already have families and just need to start earning. So with the IETs, you can earn your high school equivalency and get trained in a specific career field. And so we're really glad that our adult education director, Dr. Amber Gallup, has really been focusing on that. In just over a year, they've been able to add 19 new IETs and an additional 536 IET participants.
Cool. With an overall aging population and just fewer children being born in New Mexico, also a nationwide trend that we've noticed, how does that square with higher education enrollment? Has it gone up or down since these programs have been up and running?
You know, nationally, enrollment has decreased in higher education, especially at the community college level. Since the implementation of the Opportunity Scholarship, we have increased enrollment year over year, anywhere from 2.5 to 4.5%. As a matter of fact, we're the one of only 2 states in the country now to have 3 consecutive years of enrollment increases, which is pretty remarkable, especially considering that we went through a pandemic, but we've been able to beat national trends and show New Mexico as an example of how we're winning when it comes to high school or college enrollment. I will say, yeah, you're right. There are less people being born, which will mean less high school graduates to come in the future. And I think what's really critical as far as the marketing component is really showing New Mexicans that you can live, work, and thrive in New Mexico, which also means you can live, be educated, work, and then thrive in New Mexico, and encouraging people to stay in New Mexico instead of leaving New Mexico. So that's part of a plan that we have moving out even into the next administration. But as far as right now, New Mexico is really beating the trends when it comes to enrollment. And I don't know if I missed anything, Deputy, with that.
Yeah, and so we are really excited about the enrollment trends, but also at the higher ed department, we're really committed to also thinking through graduation, right? Right now, across the state, our graduation rates could be better, but we are really thinking about different kinds of braided funding strategies. So currently, 11 of our higher ed institutions are involved with something called the Complete College America. And of course, my brain is going blank right now. Accelerator program, excuse me. And so what they're doing is they're working as a statewide cohort to talk about student success initiatives that have efficacy. And then the Complete College America, with the grant through the Gates Foundation, is going to help to fund those pilot programs to see, give people a pilot year to be able to see if these programs are really helping to help people accomplish graduation. And so we're really excited about those kinds of programs. In addition, our agency has been working greatly on the concept of basic needs, helping students in also markets where housing is really expensive, food is really expensive, and some issues at times with student homelessness can be an issue. And so in addition to that, like really strong foundation of tuition-free college, we're also creating different kinds of programs to help address those issues. And thanks to Governor Michelle Lujan Grisham and our legislature, we've been able to push out over $5 million in food security initiatives across 20 campuses, and also some mental and behavioral health initiatives across campuses in the state as well.
I wanted to ask just the very simple question, and I can provide a little context, but why choose to continue education? I remember back in school, you kind of went because your parents told you that's what you needed to do. And eventually it was somewhere in high school for me, I think it clicked that, well, if I'm not going to sit here and pay attention to what's going on and, be with all the kids dinking around, like, what am I going to do with my life? And that was, for me, why I really realized I needed to start paying attention to what was going on in school and figure out how to make myself smarter. I think we see a continued trend with the youth out there saying, I can spend all my time sitting in front of somebody who tells me what to do, and I just want to go and make YouTube videos or be a content creator, right? And look at all those people out there going on the internet and doing whatever, making a lot of money. Why do you tell them that getting a higher education degree or maybe a trade is actually worth doing?
I'll let you take that, Deputy.
I'm like, crack speakers.
Hence why I told
not
her.
Just content creators, though, but it is a nationwide conversation of like,
right.
You don't need a college degree to start just having a career these days.
So where I would start with that is I can be lofty because I'm a professor of literature, but I really would point to like different kinds of education and liberation theorists like Paulo Freire, who says if you want to be able to read the world, you have to be able to read the word, right? And so in terms of thinking about that, like understanding that college gives us the opportunity and the time to cultivate our skills of being critical thinkers, of learning how to solve problems in safe scenarios, so that when we're put in those situations in workplaces, we have the tools to be able to think through them. I'm also somebody who really believes in the fact that we need creative thinkers, right? Like the people who can, help us to design those communities of the future, who are writing the novels that we need, that we're going to teach in 10 years from now. And so higher ed, at the end of the day, gives us choices, right? And I love that we live in the state, and I love that I work for an agency and a governor that have positioned our state to give people choices. In so many other places in the country, we're hearing conversations around, college isn't for everybody, right? People have to make that decision. Some people aren't, college material. Well, since day one, we have said all New Mexicans are college material. And in New Mexico, college is for everyone if you want to make that choice, right? And we're going to help you with all of these different pathways. And so for me, coming from the community that I'm coming from right now, right, it's under a state of emergency. We struggle with a lot of the different social drivers of health that we want to address as a state. The students that I've had there are beautiful, and they're pursuing amazing careers. They're, changing their life in many ways by achieving these credentials. And so one of the things, even before I worked at higher ed, but now that we've actually accomplished free tuition college, is that free college means a free people, right? It means that we have people who can think through the problems and be the solution bearers in their own lives, but also in their communities.
And really, going to college is a way to build a base around a foundation of being successful. So learning finances, learning management, learning communication skills are all things that you learn in your general education at a higher education institution. And if I can, I'm first generation American on my mother's side, proud Mexican American woman. Like I said, I'm the only of 4 children to have a college degree. And what it's built for me is this foundation of tradition for my nieces and nephews that are all enrolled in colleges and universities across the nation, most of which are at New Mexico State University and Doña Ana Community College, which we love, go Aggies. But, creating that tradition and that trajectory so that we can have those wages to sustain our families over time.
Anything else either of you would like to add that we haven't asked you about?
Oh my goodness. How long do you have? No, I'm just kidding. I wouldn't do that to you too. Yeah. I think one of the biggest thing that a lot of people may not know is the higher education department. We're really shifting towards a student focus during this administration, and we're really proud of that. We have a financial aid helpline that's available Monday through Friday, 8 to 5 p.m. If we do not answer, or if you call on the weekends or you call at night, we have 48 hours to respond to you. And we're really proud of that helpline because we get so many calls and we're able to fix things within days for our students. So if financial aid hasn't kicked into your account, or you're going, how am I going to pay for college? Or what does loan repayment look like? Do I qualify? Call that number. You can get that assistance. I'll find it here for you in a second. I think the other thing is there are 29 colleges and universities throughout the state. All of them have their niche. All of them have the community that they serve. There is something for you right here in New Mexico that can work for you on your timeline with our programs, which we're really proud of. We're really the gold star example of the nation of how to do higher education in our system right. We're number 21 in the nation in higher education. So oftentimes you hear that narrative that we're the worst. However, the bookends of education, early childhood is in the top 10. Higher education is in the top 25 because we've really created policies to support New Mexicans and put them first at the end of the day, which we're incredibly proud of. That's my little spiel, but I'll kick it over to the deputy to close out more eloquently than me.
Oh, yeah. And I would just say that also last week, a school started across the state for our higher ed institutions. So we just want to make sure and give a shout out to everybody, first of all, who makes those institutions run, right? The hardworking faculty, the staff members, oftentimes who are the ones who are, helping the students get to the next day, but also to the students who are taking that chance, right? A lot of times when you step onto a college campus, it might be the first time that you've left your community. It might be the first time that you've left, your pueblo, and it's a whole different world. And so just that idea of knowing that we believe in you and that we know that you're working hard to make differences in your own life, but also that piece that we're just so proud to be a part of this bigger network of higher ed institutions across the state who are working on the daily to make sure that students have those opportunities to have the beautiful lives they deserve.
Well said, Deputy. And if I can, our financial aid helpline is 1-800-279-9777. And then also folks can visit reachhighernm.gov to get more information on the opportunity and lottery scholarships. And if I can, shout out to the 41,000 New Mexicans who are receiving the Opportunity Scholarship this fall semester and the 14,000 lottery scholarship recipients who are receiving that scholarship this semester. We're incredibly proud of the work that we do, and we're here to serve New Mexicans at the end of the day.
Wow.
Well, thank you both for being here. We appreciate it. And that is quite an army of folks getting education. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's exciting. Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Thanks again to Secretary Stephanie Rodriguez and Deputy Secretary Patricia Trujillo. It's helpful to just get a better idea of what is available when it comes to higher ed. And my quick pitch, or maybe just my experience in college, we mentioned it being formative years for us. And I think when you're 18 to 21 years old, you're still pretty immature. You don't have that real world experience quite yet, and you're still trying to figure things out and what you want to do in life. And at least for me, college was really helpful to do that in a sort of safe space and, take a bunch of classes and figure out what I wanted to do in life. So that would be my quick pitch to young listeners.
Yeah, for many of us, it's a place where we get to make decisions for ourselves and our future, for the first time. So a very cool way to think about it. If you have any ideas, let us know. I'm at Chris.McKee at krqe.com, also at Chris McKee TV.
And I'm Gabrielle.Burkhart at krqe.com via email and gburknm on social media. Thank you all for listening and watching.